Hello, everyone. It's that time again. It is Wednesday, and it's another amazing animal shelter management certification program guest expert webinar. So we are so excited to have everyone joining us here. We see that room filling up. So come on, come on up to the front, right? Get a great seat. Hopefully, I know it's cold in a lot of the country. Here in Central Texas, it is pretty cold too. That's why I have my vest on. So hopefully you're staying warm. If you are cold, to get again our fingers kind of cracking the knuckles and making sure we're kind of warmed up in the chat. Okay, today's question is, because we're wrapping up the month of January, if your pet had a New Year's resolution, what would it have been? Right, not your resolution. If your pet, right? Or if you have a pet in mind, if they had a New Year's resolution, what would their resolution have been? Let's see here. We got the chat going up. All right. We got some shaving the pounds there. Ooh, eat more snacks. I love that. To finally catch a squirrel, to get more treats, to make the sun come back. All right. Steal more food from the counters. I get that. So yeah, what are the resolutions that we have there? Excellent. Catch more pigeons. All right. So a lot of fun stuff there. Oh, better dental health. All right. Hopefully we can get that for our pet friend there. How to go to the park more, to find a mom that doesn't require tricks before treats. There you go. To make it easier to get treats. I love this. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those. Again, we're here for another guest webinar speakers. We have Michele Figueroa with us today. And before we turn that on over for another amazing hour in discussion with Michele, just some friendly reminders out to our team. So again, make sure you're working through, your modules. So within each module, you have those reading, viewing, research kind of assignments in there. You have the opportunity to address the discussion question. So you're going to answer that question as well as react or, make some commentary to two questions that were answered from your fellow students. So some opportunity there to kind of engage and network. So you are going to submit next week's speaker questions, right? So last week you submitted for Michele. Now this week it's going to be for the upcoming speaker, who's going to be Dr. Jacqueline Ellis. So we did finalize that. So you're going to learn more about Jacqueline Ellis and her bio. And of course, hear from her next week. Attend the webinar like you're doing right now, or you're watching this recording. And of course, submitting the project proposal, that's actually this week. So I apologize. I think last week I made it sound like it was the previous week, but it is this week. So making sure that you're submitting your project proposal, and the final project is going to be due there on week 8. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to us via Canvas, the inbox there, Lori and or myself, that's preferred. But we also have our email addresses. If you have any issues using the Canvas inbox, you definitely feel free to email us directly. Some webinar housekeeping. So again, you already leveraged the chat. So again, you can utilize the chat to post any comments regarding our webinar here. Discussion. You can also send individual comments out if you need to, or everyone, by using that drop-down menu. Remember to get credit. So at the end of this webinar, make sure, for those of you that are watching it live, go back to Canvas, start the assignment, and just denote present or attended. That lets us know you attended the webinar live and you're done. If you are watching this as a recording, you're going to review this recording, and then the same thing, you're going to go back to this webinar assignment in Canvas, our conversation with Michele Figueroa. You're going to click on Start Assignment, and then just answer the 3 questions there if you are a recording viewer of this webinar. And of course, it's also important to thank y'all so much. We got some great responses last week. Similarly, please complete the survey. So for those who are watching it live, I'm going to throw into the chat at the end of our discussion here, as well as on the recording. Again, go through the assignment and you'll see the link for the survey. We would just love your feedback, as well as an opportunity to send a note back to Michele. So we take those comments and notes that regarding our speaker, and we forward that back over to our speakers as another acknowledgement for their time with us. All right, before we get into it, our fun disclaimer here. Before we begin, please note that the views and opinions expressed by our guest speaker are solely their own and do not necessarily represent those of Petco Love. Petco Love makes no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or applicability of the information provided, and this session should not be taken as professional advice. The content is shared for personal, non-commercial, and informational purposes only. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to get into the prime time of our session here. It's with our speaker, and we're just excited to welcome Miss Michele Figueroa, Chief Programs Officer at Humane Society of Southern Arizona. Prior to joining Humane Society of Southern Arizona, she had 2 decades of experience in animal shelter operations at Pima Animal Care Center, with leadership across field services, medical, intake, adoptions, foster care, and access to care. She's known for building progressive life-saving medical programs, expanding services for unhoused people and their pets, and leading inclusive Spanish language community outreach. A nationally respected expert in contemporary life-saving practices, Michele frequently speaks at conferences across the country, as well as webinars with special people, much like those that are in our course right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we're excited to learn more from her experience and perspective today. Please join me. Let me see those reactions or shout outs in the chat in welcoming Michele Figueroa. Welcome, Michele.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here and I'm excited about this little visit. And I heard your question about what my dogs would want for their New Year's resolution, and I never thought of that. So I think I'm going to have to go home and ask them, and I'm afraid of the answers.
Yeah, I think we all are. I'm similarly with mine. So good call, good
Right?
call. Well, Michele, let's go ahead and step right on into it. So the team, compiled over, 90 questions that we're able to, draft them into the questions and themes that we're going to see here. So I want to get right into it because a lot of them definitely are dealing with, the current module and what we're working on now, which is,
Yeah.
the adoption, operations and flow and things like that. So let's get kickstarted here. And again, just thank you in advance. We're really looking forward to this. Our
Yeah.
first theme is on intake and flow. And the question compilations via submissions from Lisa, Justine, Sarah, and Stacy. The first question is from intake counseling through housing decisions. What part of intake and animal flow process has the greatest impact on reducing length of stay? And where do shelters most often create bottlenecks without realizing it?
Oh, well, the biggest impact of length of stay happens, of course, at intake, um, not later in that animal's journey. Shelters unintentionally create bottlenecks when intake is treated as a parking lot instead of a decision point. Common bottlenecks are delaying pathway decisions, waiting for one more evaluation until we can put this dog on a pathway of A, B, or C, and housing animals without a clear exit plan. Um, what consistently works is outcome focused intake counseling. So you're counseling the intake, or I'm sorry, you're counseling, so to speak, owner surrenders or stray finders, right? You're asking them questions. You want to get as much information as you can so that these decisions, when it's time to be made for these animals, they have that clear pathway. Sometimes those missed points of asking, did they get along with your pets at home? If it was a stray, how was that interaction? Those are also key answers in making sure that animal has a pathway, a live pathway out. Um, Probably the biggest, um, I would say, the biggest thing to do at intake is have already some pathways that already exist. If that is rescue, if that is adoptions, if that is transfer out, if that is whatever foster, anything, have those documented at intake and have some kind of expectations of what is under those specific titles. That way, your intake team already is like, you know what, this guy, we have a lab rescue who would pull tomorrow or who would pull at the end of the 3 days, whatever your stray period is, so that you already have that lined up. The other thing is, and we'll talk about this, but I'll just throw this in right now, is that a lot of shelters wait for the end of the stray period to have them exposed to the public to adoptions. That should have already started. Even if the animal's on stray weight, if they are public facing, have a process where the public can reserve that animal for $50. It's first dibs, right? So if an animal doesn't get picked up by its owner, you've already found a pathway for it. It doesn't have to linger between that stray period ending and when that animal is actually up for adoption.
Cool. So I want to recap there. I think, again, I talk about these golden nuggets that, that our guest speakers share. So, you kicked it off saying, it definitely the issue can't is happening, at intake, right? When y'all are when it's treated as a parking lot,
Yeah.
and the bottlenecks that come from, the length of decision, or the issue of decision making, right, or the challenges
Yeah.
of having to make a decision, what's going on, so making those pathway decisions and not having that clear exit plan, and so also too making sure that we're outcome focused, right, with that, making sure we're
Absolutely.
doing proper intake counseling, with the individuals, or what's happening with this pet as it's coming in, and gathering, as you said, as much info as possible, and then you hit us with you should already have established pathways, right, for with your intake. So is it if it's a rescue, is it transfer, is it a foster? There's already this established protocol along with the documentation that goes with that. So boom, we're already moving forward in the pathway. So the decision is just which pathway, and then rocking and rolling
Yeah.
from there. And then I love what you said, to wrap it up, was don't wait to expose this pet to the shelter. So even if they're on a stray hold or something, it's okay to already start quote unquote marketing, right, the pet,
Yeah.
to the public, possibly even already getting an adoption, deposit or hold, so that when an animal
Yeah.
comes out of stray hold, boom, they're already, they have someone waiting for them, as opposed to starting the process after, a length of time or something like that. So
Yeah.
really good stuff. Awesome. Thank you for that, Michelle.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Next theme is pathway planning. Speaking of pathways, pathway planning on the floor. This is via questions submitted by Grace, Bradley, Ryan, and Joanne. Pathway planning sounds strategic, but what does it look like day to day on the shelter floor? And how do you keep it realistic when staffing and space are tight?
All right. So first recommendation is, of course, the things that I mentioned before. Pathway, you're already kind of identifying pathways, but you're kind of also continuing that with rounds. So group of staff from different departments. It doesn't all have to be, say you have 5 different departments. All 5 representatives don't have to be all there at the same time. It can happen, one person walking through the shelter and saying, you know what, this guy, he's been here for a minute and there's been no interest. See what's going on. Look at his postings on your website. Look at the marketing. When's the last time he's been marketed? Can we do a cute, funny AI video? Can we have him in play groups, taking videos, taking photos? So basically, you are looking at animals that are not flying out the door, figuring out why are they still here. And, you know, that's where sometimes you discover a new pathway. Someone comes in and says, hey, I want to do a foster on a long length LOS dog. Um, that's a new pathway, right? Someone that just walks in and wants to foster an LOS dog. So you just got to identify at your own pace, because I know right now shelters are hurting for staff, keeping staff on board. And I walk the shelter at least twice a day, and I'm looking. Oh, this guy's been in this kennel since last week. I'm going to inquire about what's going on. Have we had any inquiries about him? Do we need to repost him? So you just want to identify those and prioritize movement over perfection. Do not think that there is a perfect solution to all of this. There is no perfect solution. We've been learning this from years and years, decades of where we're at now, and we'll continue to learn new pathways and new inventions 5 years from now. So what's best for your organization at the pace you need to, but just keep in mind there is no perfection. It's about movement of animals. Another thing that I've in my experience, move the location of your dogs. If your dogs, you seem to be stand still, move a couple, swap them out from different sides of the buildings. Because we all know public comes in, there's a certain flow that gets followed. And sometimes the very first animals seen are the ones that fly out the door, because those are the ones that get seen by the public first. If you have a database that you can pull up and say, how many animals were adopted out of kennel A versus kennel B versus C, and you see that C is popular and is popping, move those dogs into C one at a time, rotate them in, because you have identified a certain area in your building that seems to be what everyone is drawing themselves to.
Cool. All right. So to recap here, you talked about it's you already, if you had the pathway decisions that were made, on that intake, you're following those, but continue by, I think, the big call out there is walking the shelter, right? So making the
Yeah.
rounds, and whether you're a big organization, I know some of our viewers and listeners, people of course, come from broad organizations. It doesn't have to be a whole department, but just an individual,
Yep.
that's taking the lead and speaking to that. But I think that was a key thing there too, because I think other people, as soon as you said departments, they're like, I don't have departments. It's just it's like handful of it. It's still
Yeah.
just as long as one person, is making that
Yeah.
round,
Yeah.
in there and looking at, the animals with the length of stay, and start kind of trying to understand and or dig in a little bit more, what could be an issue, right? What's going on? Why are they still here? Maybe trying to, work a new pathway, right? And
Yeah.
leveraging, do they need
Absolutely.
something new? You gave some really great examples, highlight them, in the social media, get a reel, showing them, being active, interacting with other pets, whatever it might be, etc. I like what you called out though too, because I think, our viewers, just like myself, but the viewers and someone talk about wanting to, they watch it back to get some tidbits. I love how you highlight like at your own pace. So be mindful of, what you're able to do, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think coupled with that, you talked about that movement over perfection, right? So the key is just getting the dog or getting the animals moved, right? Not just out of the shelter, but then you also
Yes.
pivoted in the movement within the shelter, right? Do we need are we swapping the, the animals around into different, shelters, and stuff. I love that call out too. If you have the data, if you're able to leverage, with any, software that you're using, and that denotes specifically that, can you find, what is the kennel, that's popping
Yeah.
and stuff for
Yeah.
getting some movement out there. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then, another thing that I put, as a quote here is do what's best for your org, right? So be mindful of that. I think that goes to, doing what's best. And again, reinforcing at the pace that you're used to, right? So
Yeah.
again, thank you just for those call outs,
Yeah.
in
Of
there.
course.
So
Yeah. And I
awesome.
want to, and I missed one thing, and I want to add, and it's
Sure.
sometimes it's we forget about it. I do too. Um, Swapping an animal out with another org. Sometimes,
Mm,
we know our community. Sometimes they're looking for things specific that we don't have, and we may have something that another community is looking for. Swap out two dogs for two dogs, and you will see that what your actual community is looking for, and that other org will also. So we often swap with Pinal County, and
okay.
they're a real rural place, and we get our dogs adopted that have been sitting in their shelter for 4 or 5 months,
Mm.
and it's just about know your community. And there's nothing wrong with swapping out so that the dog or cat can get new eyes on it.
Yeah, I love that, and I think kind of reinforces some things that we heard in other sessions. Going back to actually our leadership course for those that were able to listen in on the webinar from our shelter leadership. They talked about that collaborative nature among shelters, in the community. So make sure that's a great call out. Collaborate, with the
Yeah.
other organizations, within your community, and in that instance, with the swap in of animals. So I like that. All right, next one. The theme is high volume, limited resources. This is via a question submitted by Kelly, Desi, Marielle, and Dylan. In large open admission shelters, what operational practices most effectively protect daily care standards while still moving animals efficiently with limited resources?
That's a good question. Oh, I think it's a identify what you want the day to look like, with standards of care, with SOPs, with expectations of what should be daily done with animal care, um, and reducing unnecessary handling and procedures. There's a lot of, I find that there's a lot of, I got to do it all in order to, in order to feel as though I've accomplished this much for the animals. And it's not about that. It's about efficiency. So identify what has to be absolutely done, and then fill in the gaps between all of those spaces of what you want to do, what's beneficial for the animals, And I know there's limited resources. I always encourage shelters to, one, market for volunteers, because that's going to cover all the things that you're not going to get to, right? Free labor also. And two, always have some sort of Amazon wish list so that people that don't have the ability to come out and volunteer but want to make a difference and want to feel good about helping, they can literally, when it's Prime Day, that's when we get the most
Hmm.
donations in, because they're already buying, right? So they're just going to start dumping things in their cart that we need, and so that's where we see the most donations come in. So it's about identifying what has to be done, filling that in, and then filling the gap in with the things that um, make ourselves feel good, make the dogs feel good, and trying to customize, again, what is best for your shelter. There are shelters, that have 700 animals a year versus some organizations that are 20,000 animals a year. It's about efficiency and identifying what is the proper flow for your org and what you can handle. If there is a shelter that is close to a college, that is right there. You put some fillers out in the dorms, in the lunch areas, and you will have college students who will come out and assist with dog walking, feeding. They always want to do the fun stuff, right? But sometimes the fun stuff we can't get to. But as long as it's being done,
That's what's important. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. With this one, kind of addressing the question with the question, right? And I love this, kind of too, because, so I think sometimes, I guess for me, we look for what is the answer, but you pivoted back, and I think we hear this from other speakers too, is like, what is best for your org, right? And what are you able to handle? But you talked about, like, first off, what do you want the day to day to look like as it relates to animal care, right? So aligning to that, and then from there, what needs to be done? What are the absolutes? Like, this must be done, and then fill in the gaps, from there,
Yeah,
with in regards to what the capacity is, not just the capacity of with animals, but the capacity of the work staff and volunteers, and things like that. I think going back to what you said, movement over perfection, things like that. So again, what's the pace, and I mean, what fits your org's pace, and what y'all are able to do. But through the ultimate, I think, the theme of this one, you called out efficiency, right? Ultimately, what you're working to be a bit more efficient, or strive to be, efficient. And then you have call outs on how you can help yourself, definitely, operationally with, marketing, for volunteers. I think that's always, something that's being done, in this world. A shout out to the Amazon wish list, especially right before Prime Day. So key there.
yeah,
So, you heard it first, your best day to get that wish list in place is going to be for those Prime Days. And I think the Prime Days are actually happening more frequent than not. It used to be just one, and
yes,
now it's like every so often. So great
yes,
opportunities there. So making sure we're marketing those. And so, yeah. So again, you recap, also you call out the main things, what's best for your shelter as relates to, being more efficient, having the proper flow, and of course with what you can handle. So cool
yeah,
stuff there.
absolutely.
Excellent. Want to do a check-in. How are we feeling out there in the webinar world? So give us a thumbs up or heart. We're driving with everything so far from Miss Michele Figueroa here. There we go. Thank you so much. On to the next question here. The theme is length of stay, and long stay animals. This is via submissions from Stacy, Lori, and Shiloh. Question is, from an operations standpoint, where do shelters unintentionally slow animal movement? And what is one practical fix that consistently improves outcomes for long stay animals?
Um, Behavior watch and medical monitoring are probably the key, top two key ones that resonate with me. Is we always feel as though we have to adopt out perfection, and we want to wait until that happens. And as we know, living in this world for an animal world for as long as we have, I bet most of our dogs at home that we have are not going to meet that.
I just started thinking of Nelson. I'm sorry, Nelson, where are you? Yeah, he's a little rambunctious, but I don't mind. It's Nelson,
Right,
So
right.
I hear
So,
you.
right. So there's always us out in the real world.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to, again, go at the pace of what that animal is allowing us to do. But in behavior watch is what kind of they get stuck at. Um, and Mia, you're right. We end up with the worst ones. All five of
Hmm.
mine are a work in progress, let's say. Um, Medical monitoring, the same thing. Trust our community. We have to trust our community. And that comes from, trusting them to be able to take on ringworm. We adopt out ringworm, and we give them the information they need. We give them the medication they need, and we have to trust that they are going to follow through. Our ringworm cats fly out of here,
Hmm.
and it's incredible. And it was just about trust. Trust your community. So don't let the things that the community can take on. Let them. Don't let them sit in the shelter because we are stuck in we can't trust the community. They have good intentions. Now, don't get me wrong, there may be some times where someone didn't understand the instructions or we didn't explain it to them correctly, and they come back and say, well, the ringworm hasn't gone away. We should not come to the first thought of they didn't do it correctly.
Hmm.
There may be something else going on. Let's check our milligrams of meds that we prescribed. Did we write the right instructions on the prescription? So for me, those are the two. And then the one we can't really control is court holds,
Hmm.
bond holds, anything that has to do with animal protection if you have officers, animal control officers. But with that one, you can still do active planning. You it may be on a bond hold for, let's say, 30 days, but there is no reason why that animal should not have already an exit plan. You've already been given 30 days to prepare for that. Same with hoarding cases. Just prepare their pathway.
Hmm.
So do anything that's going to lessen the length of stay, even if it's by 1, 2, 3 days. That's still better. One, for the animal. Two, better for your budget.
Hmm.
So it's being able to identify early on, regardless of what is causing the length of stay. And
Yeah.
like I said, court hearings, all of those things, those are hard. Those are,
Hmm.
they are what they are. But at least I know I have 30 days to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of the lemonade right there, right?
Yeah,
We have that good runway to ramp up.
yeah,
So, you
yeah,
know, so behavior watch, again, tied into perfection. Can't expect perfection, meaning the perfect, animal walking out the door. If they have, some things going on, trust the community, right? And
yes.
get them to those homes. And I think that was a great, hold up of the mirrors. Like, come on now, look at our pets at home, right? We don't have the perfect animals, but we still love them. And, it's manageable where we can do it, it's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
The medical monitoring. So there was some chatter that actually flew up through the chat regarding that. So I don't want to misspeak, but
yeah,
Michelle, I'm sure there's with proper alignment from not only the leadership in the shelter, but with the veterinarian and stuff like that. Like what is the policy for that, establishing that? Would there be any instances where there would be like a state requirement that would keep that from happening, or is that not necessarily the case? It's more a shelter, having the proper policies in place to allow to be able to make that happen.
yeah. Every one, you got to know your veterinary laws within your
Hmm.
state.
Yeah.
Two, it's about the veterinarian that you work with. How comfortable are they with that? And three, you have to, if it takes waivers, so adoption, someone's interested in an animal, has medical circumstances, um, and it could recover from home, or it has some outstanding ones that the shelter is willing to still take on. They just want the
Hmm.
animal out of the shelter so it can
Hmm.
recover on whatever's happening. We write out waivers, And the waiver basically says, as an adopter, I understand that this is the animal's medical condition. This
Hmm.
is what could transpire, what I need to look out for. Here are the phone numbers I need to contact. It's either the clinic. If it goes out in a foster, it's the foster team that gets contacted.
Hmm.
So write out your expectations of what you want the adopter or temporary guardian or foster to follow, and
Hmm.
trust that they will. That's about building relationships, right? And
Yeah.
of course, they are the ones of word of mouth. It goes great for them, and they are going
Hmm.
to be singing your praises to everybody out in the community. And this is just, you know, word of mouth, pushing your name out there, your
Hmm.
organization, how wonderful the foster department is,
Yeah.
all of those things. But again, it has to be an alignment between the top leadership and your veterinarian,
Yeah.
and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's what I was thinking too. You know, when you hear waiver, like, oh, here comes the legalese, but it's a waiver by name, but what you're really doing is setting up the relationship or partnership
Yeah,
agreement saying, hey, we're entrusting you to help take care of this animal.
yeah,
And, this is what's going on, but here's also how we're going to support you. We're going to give you the tools, the medication, whatever it is, so
absolutely.
that you can help this animal right at home, but know that and now here's the support though, if you have any issues or anything like that. So that's really what it is. And you mentioned that how it builds a relationship and helps, engage your community, how some people, like you said, wear that badge of honor because they are able to take on, that and do it for the
Yeah,
pet. And now the pet, it resolves itself, from that condition, things like that. The other thing that for me, like came to mind is, I think, there's probably instances too where you also help build up your foster base, right? Meaning, like, if you have someone that needs to foster and this pet has medical needs, something like that, like, oh yeah, I took that on, and like I'm happy to do that because I have experience with it.
yeah,
Or the similar approach, even if you weren't new to it, but I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Like it might help someone that's making a decision to foster an animal that might be have that necessary requirement and stuff. And
yeah,
then you did mention the last one, the fall through with or not fall through, the length of stay of the court bond holes. It is what it is. But again, the opportunity that you see, Michelle, is that gives us a broader runway to have a plan in place so that when that 30 days up, boom, we got a positive outcome coming in.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
Misty shot now. She's like, Foster's all my BFFs. I love that, Misty. I'm already envisioning Misty baking cookies for him, all that good stuff. So awesome. I love it. Love it. All right. Moving along. We're more than halfway through this hour, and you've already filled up, a couple of pouches full of gold nuggets here, Michelle. So thank you so much. The theme is medical and disease prevention operations. Speaking of, medical monitoring. The questions, this one's compiled from questions via Stephanie, Joanne, Marielle again, and Barbara. Disease prevention has huge operational consequences. What intake, health, sanitation, or outbreak prevention practices have made the biggest difference in high volume shelters?
All right. So, of course, vaccinations are always important, right? So, if two ways of going about it, should immediately vaccinate upon intake. If you do have the luxury of able to vaccinate before their actual intake appointment, so what historically we've done in the past at Pima Animal Care Center was uh, vaccinate those animals and then set out their intake appointment a week later. That way,
Mm,
it's on board. It's giving them the best chance to exposure. If that's not really an option, then it needs to absolutely be done upon intake. It should not be done 15 minutes later, after you put them in a kennel. They've now been exposed with nothing on board, so it's immediate upon entry of that intake building before they even get housed. The other things are color code populations, meaning if you are an organization that separates your strays versus your adoptables, color code them. If that means putting a circle sticker, a dinosaur sticker for whatever population you are working with, for instance, blue for adoptions and green for strays, so that you can see the flow happening and make sure there are no combination of animals if that is what your org is doing, not combining animals. For us for us currently, we have the most um, the puppies, the young dogs. We have a section just for them, and when they are past their stray weight, they immediately go to the section for adoptions where it's only puppies and very young dogs. That way, they're not exposed to all the adult diseases. But that is how we do it because we have sort of the space to do it. So knowing your population, how you want to intermingle them, if you need to identify to separate them, make sure you're doing it either color coding or however that you want to be able to identify them separately. The other thing is when you identify something that is, let's say you or I, don't wait to move it off the floor. If you have an isolation, move it immediately, even if it is. So we our intake staff and most of our techs are allowed to move animals immediately if they identify something with URI or any distemper symptoms, even if a vet has not seen it yet, because we'd rather keep it off the floor and the next day, if the vet sees it, great. She says, nope, it's not that, it's just allergies. I'd rather do that than to risk that whole population waiting 24 hours to be diagnosed by a vet. Mm-hmm. So it's better to be safe than sorry. I'm glad. There you go, Mariel. There you go. Reading my mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. So better to be safe than sorry. Move those immediately. It's not going to hurt anything. And then if you happen to have a outbreak, be proactive in identifying what you're going to do if that happens. You know, are you identifying a building, a section in your facility? Are you going to have to move them off-site, get an agreement with an off-site organization so that you have a plan? The worst thing to do is have an outbreak and then try to figure out what the plan is. So just be proactive in identifying those things. As little shelters, I've done it in the past. We've hung up those blue drapes that they use for surgical clinic. Those big, large blue drapes that are like, I don't know, 10 feet by 6. We've used those to kind of designate areas where only medical was able to enter. That also is for, you know, if they're blowing URI, it's airborne, all of that stuff. So we try to seclude it if we did not have an area. So just have a plan. And the other thing is, if you have a vet staff on board and there is an outbreak, have them reach out to Corette, to Florida. Like we have veterinarian experts that are all over the country, you know, Dr. Crawford, Dr. Levy, like all of them take them up on their experience and have them guide you if you are not used to outbreaks or what you suspect as an outbreak.
Cool. So talking about the flow, and I mean, you kicked it off with vaccinations. Then the vaccinations must be immediate upon intake. You know, there's no delay. So first things is they're getting vaccinated. And if you could, and if the opportunity presents itself, vaccination even before, you know, so do the vaccination. And in your example, you said it was a vaccination offsite before they were going to come in for that intake a week later, to limit, again, exposure. Within the facility, color code, populations, you know, your example was strays versus adoptables. So we're not, combining, animals within the organization, if that's what the org is doing. As well as a call out, you know, if the opportunity exists too, you know, keep y'all even kept the puppies secluded to their own area, so they weren't limited to to limit their exposure to adult diseases. Be safe. It's better to be safe than sorry. So if you the staff or whoever, you know, and encouraging and empowering them and giving them, you know, the okay that if they see something, you know, immediate removal, you know, to whatever that space is, to then, you know, be followed up by the vet. So not to wait. So to limit any potential for outbreak, et cetera. It's okay to be safe. They're better safe than sorry. And then regarding, you know, outbreak, with that, element O for outbreak, followed up by P for proactive, right, Michelle? So
Yep.
have the plan. Don't wait till the outbreak happens. Think through the scenarios, leverage existing documentation that's out there. I love what you talked about too, is, reaching out, to the experts. Don't hesitate to reach out to experts that are out there,
Yep.
whether it's before to, provide guidance, or there's probably even protocols that have been drafted that can easily be, shifted into to your organization. Or if we're in the midst of it and it's something new, don't hesitate to reach out to experts that are across the country,
Yeah.
et cetera. So love those call outs. So great stuff.
Yeah.
All right. The next theme here. Oh, shifting over into data and metrics that actually matter. Question submitters were Haley, Allison, Grace, and Karen. With better shelter software and data transparency, which metrics should operations teams truly prioritize to improve animal flow without overwhelming staff? And we're already taking off the list the number one, the hot kennel. So we know the hot kennel is one data point for animal flow to get them out. But what are
Yeah.
some other ones, Michelle,
Yeah.
that you've seen?
The whole key point is if you have shelter software that is one cooperative and two that's easily able to write reports. I know Chameleon does it, Shelter Love does it, Shelter Buddy does it. Um, but the data points that we should be paying attention to is always length of stay, right? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Um, all the metrics that I'll say you should track year to date and then month to month to see if there's a change for whatever reason. No, kind of remember, jot down. We jot down things that happen in the month so that when 4 months from now, when we're talking about January, we know some of the things that could have triggered our data into one direction or another.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, one of those things is we got through a distemper outbreak. An outbreak, it was four, but we went back and realized that we had taken animals from an organization we had not normally, and we didn't really understand their demographic, where they were located. And so we went back and did some research, and it's possible it came from them. No one could be 100% sure, but now it's allowed us to ask more questions of an organization that we transfer in from. So let's see, daily population versus capacity. We should always know that every single day to know what our capacity or what our census is, and our intake versus our outcomes over time. What is working in marketing? This is the other thing. Marketing. Compare your marketing with the number of adoptions or outcomes that you've had that month. Did the AI videos then skyrocket your outcomes? So is that something to be keyed on? Oh, we should do another AI video or do photographs because it looked like a spike in our adoptions. Um, Look at all the things that not only happen in your org, look outside of your org. What's happening in your city? What we have an event called the Gem Show that brings millions and millions of people into the city, and to the point where like all hotels are booked, all Airbnbs are making money like crazy
Mm-hmm.
because people from all over the world come and sell their gems and their stones. And so we kind of see an ebb and flow of intake. You have more people out doing things. Now they're bringing in strays, right? So our intake kind of goes up. And then we see the students moving into their dorms. And then our outcome fosters are like kind of rising too. Well, because the college students are coming in to get an animal. So know what's happening out in the
Mm-hmm.
community also. It's also, of course, it's important to know your data inside of the building, but like I said, outside the building is also key. So looking also at location, like we mentioned, of kennels, like what's happening in your kennels. Is it, kennel 1, 2, and 4? Um, Change, if you can, change the flow of how adopters enters your buildings or your facility. If you have an alternate route, change it, to see if now animals that used to be seen last can be seen first. If you do not have the ability to change out kennels,
Hmm.
it's little things like that. Also, know medical. What if you are getting URI or any other disease? Look at the consistency of kennels. Are these certain kennels the ones breaking out? And why is that? Is the cleaning
Mm.
process at the end? And so your team is exhausted, and it seems to be that the last five kennels are just not being cleaned thoroughly. Look at all of those things. So, literally walking onto shelter property, anything that you are doing is shelter data that could be used for something at some
Hmm.
point. You
Yep.
know, play groups. If you're running play groups, look at the days of time that you're doing them. Are you finding that your animals are more amped up in the morning or not amped up in the PM? Um, all of those things. We look at what animals can go out with what animals in play group. That's a given. That's a given. We all know that that's how that should be ran. But I think a lot of people forget we should also be looking at time of day, because time of day, they're in their kennel all day, and in the morning, is it more beneficial for them to come out, or is it in the afternoon, or is it in the PM? What works best for their mental state?
Hmm. Right on. So a lot of points, right? So what teams should they truly prioritize? I think this is a list, Michelle. I'm going to recap it. And I would encourage our readers. It's not all mean do it all of it. Here's a list and find your couple of ones if you're not doing them. The ones you're doing, check those off, and then maybe here's some additional ones to add or tidbits because
Yeah.
there's some really cool call outs here. So first one, does your shelter software allow, for it in reporting? If it does, you can pivot into that. If you don't, there's also ways to, how are you tracking and how can you glean, the data from how you're tracking, or are you if you're having to do it, let's say manually, right, an Excel spreadsheet for what it's worth, for our even smaller orgs, just are you collecting the right data so that you can, analyze it. But nevertheless, you called out length of stay. Is it increasing or decreasing, and why? Looking at year to date as well as month to month, and understanding, why things might be changing, and then you had the call out there too if what external factors might have impacted, data, and does that mean, do we need to ask more questions? Example, like if we're, transferring or accepting animals from another organization, asking more questions because of how that might have impacted some of the changes that we recently saw with a certain population, let's say, or a certain time period. Daily population versus capacity, right? So your census, that was a key, another metric to look at. Intake versus outcomes over time, and then you followed up with that with marketing versus outcomes. So one was, we're talking about flow of animals to start off with and kind of what's going on, but now you talked about, okay, now some of the things operationally that we're doing, so how did maybe marketing impact outcomes, and what were the things that had some more prominence, over others in terms of action that it might have spurred, as well as being in tune with what's going on in the community, right? So things that are happening, that might be impacting intake and or outcomes, so understanding that and why. So your call outs for major conferences coming through, certain conferences coming through. You talked about the kids coming back in from into college and foster into outcomes, increasing. In there. So all I'd say is, keep the ear to the ground with what's happening there, and monitoring and keeping
Yeah.
track of it. And then I love this call out on the medical, side too. Are we seeing consistency with, where maybe things are happening, as it relates to, kennels or areas of the building, and, does, that those things maybe need to be addressed in a certain way by seeing again, wow, it's consistent. So there's something happening, with these select, kennels. So what do we need to address? And all that, you wrapped it up with walk in the shelter, to understand, what's going on, in terms of, or you called out that anything can be used, right? So just kind of walk in shelter
Yeah.
to, to be mindful of, things that are happening and how that might,
Totally.
impact, or play into,
Yeah.
the number that you're seeing, in there.
Yeah.
So a lot of
And
stuff there, but really good.
yeah, the two things
Hmm.
that I kind of live and die by is too much data without ownership creates paralysis. So if you
Hmm.
don't know why you're collecting it, it's no good to you. It's almost a waste of time. But the simple, visible metrics drive your action. So the simple things that you think, are really not important, they do add some importance to what you do every single day.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, data without ownership drives paralysis. So yeah, again, I think it goes back to those the data metrics that actually matter, right? So make them matter. So I'll just
Yeah,
here's the report. This we have the data, but what are we doing with it? Or do we understand the data? Why it's
right.
happening? Can we anticipate data? Can we be prepared? Knowing something's going to happen, or et cetera. So definitely love that call out as well. All right. Moving on here, the theme on this one: capacity management and tough decisions. Question submitted by Miss Chelsea, Caitlin, and Misty. When intake exceeds capacity, what operational decisions must be made immediately to protect animal welfare, staff well-being, and community trust?
Oh man, I feel like this is probably what most orgs go through, right? Your intake is you got the conveyor belt going, and there's not many slots to kennels to put these
Mm-hmm.
animals. Um, a couple of things. You start looking at can we the finders can are we comfortable turning them into fosters, asking them to hold on to the animal for the stray period. Also, know your laws within your state, because some states don't allow this. Some states, you that animal has to be physically in your building in order to count towards the actual stray period. So know those things. For us, it does not. Our finders can hold on to the animal for that stray period of 3 days or 5 days if they have any identification. Um, and we ask them to hold on to them. And at that point, too, we also vaccinate and microchip, so that animal goes out with vaccines, because if they have to come back, they already have that on board. The microchip will be in the org's name. If by chance that the finders, which you will find more often than not, they will want to keep that animal. And so the microchip just gets put in their name. And then they're allowed to come back and have their animal altered for free. But that helps with that census. Um, Diversion, any kind of diversion. If it's an owner surrender, have a list of resources for them. If that means training, if that means supplies, with supplies, how do you get supplies, right? When your resources for yourself are limited. You have many orgs out there. You have greater good charities who you can become an ambassador for them, and they give out supplies for pets so that you can turn and use them for diversion. Um, you have fostering. If you have animals in your shelter, use your foster team. If you have them, place out a plea saying, we're at capacity. Tell a few stories. If that's medical stories, um, everyone wants to help a medical animal. Everyone does. And the medical stories, cases are what one drives the most revenue into a shelter, because it's that heartfelt story. Use those. If you want to get those animals out, plead that out. It gives you room. Even if it gives you 5 kennels, it gives you room. Um, are there services that you can pause? Are you allowed to pause services? And those services can range from, of course, your intake, anything that is going to help lower the amount of animals coming in, even for a brief time, so that your team, one, can protect their mental health, their well being, but also be transparent in this. If you decide to close for 1 day or 2 days, half a day, be transparent with your community. This is the reason why we will need to close down our intake for the next 8 hours. We are at capacity. We are finding solutions, and explain to them what you're doing. One of the things they hate the most is you making a decision and not explaining why. Because then what happens? Their mind goes to the worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
right? So be transparent. It never hurts anyone to be transparent, and it also helps the staff understand that they're being supported by their leadership. Of we understand what's going on. We want to support you. So finding ways to either pause intake or clean out. I will never. The one thing we did do, and I don't ever want to go back there when I was at PAC, was we popped up kennels everywhere we could.
Mm,
And after doing that for so long, I realized that was not good for us, and that wasn't good for the animal. So we had to find other avenues, and those were literally clean out and trying to get the finders or the owner surrenders to just hold on for one more week. We will give you supplies to just hold on so that we can, make prepare for adoption events to try to get now animals that were in the shelter out so we can make room for the ones that were coming in. And
mm,
also transfers. You hook up with some organizations that accept transfers. Do everything you can to make sure that relationship is built. Again, being proactive. Identify those organizations before you get into that situation.
mhm. I think that, when what you say with all of this, I went back to what you talked about, with outbreaks, and you ended it here with being proactive, right? So I'm glad this question was posed, is that don't wait for it to happen. What do we do when this happens, right? When we
Yeah.
get to the point to where we are at capacity, what are we going to do? And then you talked about, first off, working with your fosters or the finders, can you hold on, for another day or so and provide them support, the reasoning, all that good stuff, in there. Also too, getting, even with that, you talked about like with the finders, we can go out and make sure that they're vaccinated out in the field, vaccinated and chipped. That way, when they do come in, that always gives them that length of time away, to get them, properly exposed and ready with that vaccination. The services, what services can you pause? And then, with that, but also then you pivoted into, being transparent with the community, right? So letting them know, like, we're at capacity, and, what the statement is, around that, but informing the community that way, again, they're not making up their own stories, if they're not being told directly from the organization, what it is, but also just to, ensuring that there's that trust, with the proper communication that's out there. I think that goes, also to, being proactive with, the work that you're doing in the community, and the type of messaging that you're putting out there, and that you are active and stuff like that too. So that when that notification does come out, stuff like that, it definitely, there's already trust built behind it. So and it's also, maybe even a call to action saying, hey, how can we help? Cause we know this organization is doing good work, in our community. So what can we do to help, in this time of potential need, of the capacity, being met, and along with the, being proactive with relationships in advance with organizations that can accept transfers, so that we can transfer out organizations to, build capacity. And I love what you ended there too. You want to see that, it helps the staff when you're making these types of decisions, when you're stopping the flow if it needs to, whatever it is, how we're organizing through all this, because the staff, like you mentioned, feels that, they're being supported by leadership in the decisions, and as opposed to leadership saying, well, it is what it is. We need to find more space. We need to make more space, and you live that example of just, stacking kennels upon kennels, crates upon crates, and it just, wasn't good, all around, not only for the animals, but
Yeah.
also, what it did for the staff's well-being. So thank you for those call outs. All right. Michele, we're at the top of the hour. That was a fast hour, and I want to see some more reactions. I mean, every one of these were, one, great questions that were compiled, but two, the breadth of information, that you shared, with our students, today, here live. So, thank you for the reactions. Anything that you want to, anything further, we got some comments, coming in. But before we wrap up, let me make sure, I want to paste in, our Zoom survey. So for those of y'all right there, boom. So look for my profile pic. There's a link to the Zoom survey. So make sure, go ahead and click on that link. You can even click on it right now. That way it's already popped up on your browser. Before you step away from your computer, if you would, just just provide us that quick feedback on this session, as well as provide Michelle with kudo acknowledgement, all that good stuff. So we could probably get that over to you. So yeah, a lot of thank yous, a lot of high fives and fist bumps coming in on the chat there. So Michelle, again, thank you so much. You've always been not only a great advocate and partner for the pets and the tremendous work that you've done in Arizona, but coupled with that, you've also just been a great partner and friend for Petco Love, and we appreciate you for that. So thank you for sharing all of this
Yeah.
great knowledge and information. So
Well, thank you. It was an honor. And please, if they have additional questions, you can send them my way, Renee. I'm more
okay.
than happy to answer. All
Yeah, for
right.
sure. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Well, with
Yeah.
that, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for your time. Students, thank you all also for those of you that are joining live, for those of you all that are watching this recording. Thank you for watching it here with us, and we'll see you next week. So y'all have a great rest of the week. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.